This is the first episode of a new legal series that I'm going to do with former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner, so let's get into it. Merrick Garland has announced the appointment of a special counsel to move forward with investigating Trump for both issues related to January 6th and stolen documents at Mar-a-Lago. So first of all, does this signal an investigation that's moving toward indictment? And I ask that because if Merrick Garland had no intention of indicting, I'd imagine the guy would simply say that he won't indict as opposed to the whole to-do that is appointing a special counsel.
You know, Brian, as frustrating as it felt to hear the announcement yesterday from Merrick Garland that now another special counsel is being appointed, I actually think it could end up being a good thing. Had Merrick Garland decided that no charges should be brought against Donald Trump for either the Mar-a-Lago classified documents crimes or the January 6th insurrection, he simply could have made that decision himself. The fact that he appointed a special counsel and has now entirely turned over both of those investigations to the special counsel, Jack Smith, you really can't read that any other way than it is a step in the direction of Donald Trump possibly being criminally indicted.
Now, is there something to be said for the fact that this guy prosecuted war crimes at The Hague? Like, he doesn't seem like your run-of-the-mill call 1-888 accidents prosecutor here. Like, what do you know about Jack Smith?
So I have been talking with my friends and colleagues, people that worked with and for Jack Smith. I'm trying to do my homework before I sort of start to talk about what those perceptions are. Here's the thing. Not only was Jack Smith a war crimes prosecutor at The Hague, he was also in charge of the Department of Justice Public Integrity Section, what they call the PIN. And during his tenure there, he authorized and was involved in some pretty consequential prosecutions. The prosecution of Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey, the prosecution of the governor of Virginia, Bob McDonnell. Now, one Democrat, one Republican, both really challenging cases, not just because of the atmospherics that it was the Department of Justice going after high government or high elected officials, but these were really challenging cases on the facts, on the merits. The reason I say that is the Menendez prosecution ended in an acquittal, a not guilty verdict. And here's the thing, Brian, give me a prosecutor any day who is willing to take a really challenging, high-profile, politically charged case to trial and lose it. That is not some sort of failing. That's not an embarrassment. In my book, that's a badge of merit. Why? Because he was willing to take difficult cases to trial. Now, he took the Governor McDonnell case to trial. He won a conviction, but it was reversed on appeal, again, because it was fraught with lots of challenging legal issues. But those things are not failures. In my book, those are successes. It's a sign that he was willing to take a risk, to do the hard work of bringing really difficult cases against high government officials, elected officials who violated the law. Give me that kind of a prosecutor on my team any day of the week.
Yeah, completely agree. That's a great point. Why appoint a special counsel to begin with? And here's why I ask this question. Merrick Garland is clearly doing this to avoid the perception of impropriety here. But when you announce that you have to recuse yourself, doesn't that validate accusations that he can't be impartial? And that might carry some weight, by the way, if it was anyone other than Merrick Garland. This guy is so impartial that we are kind of losing our minds over it. So why validate this Republican talking point that the AG can't be impartial here? Like, why not just do the DOJ's mission of pursuing justice without fear or favor?
You know, it's a great question, and we can certainly do an autopsy on the decision that has already been made by Merrick Garland. So here's the thing. We already know that Donald Trump's supporters, his base, will never accept that a fair, independent, righteous investigation can be conducted of Donald Trump. But Merrick Garland didn't make this decision trying to convince Trump's base or Trump's loyalists or lackeys that, this was the right thing to do. Merrick Garland made this decision because there's an appearance of conflict. Let's unpack that. The special counsel regulations say that if the attorney general decides there are exceptional circumstances and that a special counsel would be in the public interest, then the attorney general appoints one. Here's what happened when Donald Trump announced formally he was running for the presidency in 2024. Joe Biden has been saying all along that he is going to run for a second term. That was common knowledge. The moment Donald Trump announced formally he was running, he obviously becomes Joe Biden's political opponent. Merrick Garland, like it or not, is sort of tied to Joe Biden. Joe Biden appointed him. And an attorney general is generally responsible to sort of forward the policy and the mission of the president. That is not to say the attorney general, doesn't make independent prosecutorial decisions without regard to the president or the White House. But listen, President Biden can fire Attorney General Merrick Garland at any moment. So those two are aligned in a very real sense. So when you have President Biden's attorney general investigating and potentially prosecuting President Biden's only announced political opponent for re-election to the presidency, I'm sorry, that presents at least the appearance of conflict. It might actually present an actual conflict. Now, could this investigation still have been run by Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice without a special counsel? And could the American people have confidence in the integrity of the investigation? I think the answer is yes. But to avoid even the appearance of impropriety or conflict, Merrick Garland did what he thought was the right thing to do without regard to how it would be received by Donald Trump's base or his loyalists. And I think that's why he made the decision to appoint a special counsel.
There is some irony here, though, in the fact that most of us believe that the reason that Donald Trump announced his presidency, his run for presidency in 2024 so early is to do exactly this, is to be able to have this talking point where he then leans back and says, look, I'm the only announced candidate for 2024. There's all these investigations into me, including the one at the DOJ. They're clearly trying to do this to sink my campaign. And so in a way, this is not necessarily, this doesn't stem out of the DOJ's doing. This is exactly what Donald Trump himself wanted.
But the Department of Justice can't do the wrong thing because it might give Donald Trump something he wants. You have to do the right thing without regard to how the wrong people might respond.
Now, let's move over to a less serious player in this game, and that's Marjorie Taylor Greene. She had come out and said, Republicans, this is a quote, Republicans will need to refuse to appropriate any funding to Merrick Garland's special counsel and defund any part of the DOJ acting on behalf of the Democrat Party as a taxpayer-funded campaign arm for the Democrats' 2020 presidential nominee. Can Republicans do that? Like, to what degree can a Republican-controlled Congress control the funding for a special counsel probe that is under the purview of the DOJ?
The first question is, how much legislation has Marjorie Taylor Greene successfully pushed through Congress? I think that would be about zero. So I don't take her seriously. She's not a serious member of Congress. She is a legislative thug, making lots of hollow threats. I don't believe for a minute that they will defund the police, that they will defund the FBI, that they will defund the Department of Justice, that they will try to defund special counsel. What I do believe they'll do is hold frivolous oversight hearings. They will carpet bomb the Department of Justice with subpoenas, and then they will find all sorts of reasons to claim that DOJ didn't comply fully or quickly enough to those subpoenas. So what they can do is they can make a lot of mischief. They can make a lot of noise. But at the end of the day, I really don't believe that they can successfully impede criminal investigations or criminal prosecutions.
Yeah, I think the new quickest unit of measurement that we're going to discover is how quickly Republicans now appreciate the importance of subpoenas. The same party that spent the last couple years pretending that they have carte blanche to ignore every subpoena that comes their way. Now, moving over to Trump, he is, of course, claiming that this is all the result of him announcing his run. That's what we spoke about before. He announced that he's, quote, not going to partake in it. Can he not partake in it?
Yes, he can and he should. If I were his lawyer, which I never would be, I would advise him, don't partake in it. Why? Because you have a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, sport. You're the target of the criminal investigation. You know what? When I was investigating bank robberies, guess what? The bank robber never did partake in my investigation because the bank robber was the one I was looking to lock up. So that is sort of a pointless assertion by Donald Trump. I'm not going to participate in the criminal investigation of me.
Now, we often hear about, the nearly 1,000 cases so far, the nearly 1,000 charges that have been passed down for those who partook in the Capitol insurrection. And yet still nothing from the major political figures who actually incited this thing on January 6th. This might be me betraying my ignorance here, but if the people who carried out a crime at the behest of someone were charged, then doesn't that effectively confirm that the people who incited or caused those people to act are also guilty, or at least accessories to something here?
It does. And that's why we go after mob bosses, not just wise guys, underbosses, capos, consiglieres, or foot soldiers. And, I've been sitting in court for 6 weeks now watching the Oath Keepers trial. And there are trials all across federal district court in Washington, D.C. against other insurrectionists, other folks who were inspired to attack the Capitol to try to stop the certification of Joe Biden's win. And Brian, many of them are defending on, I was doing what Donald Trump told me to do, which is not a legal defense. It is mitigation. It will be considered at the time they're sentenced, because to a person, every single one who has been tried by a jury has been convicted. But I think that is the frustration that so many of us feel. The foot soldiers who were ordered by Donald Trump to commit this precise crime are being held accountable. Many of them are going to prison. And Donald Trump is still out there, golfing and attending dinner parties and, fundraisers and
announcing a run for president of the United States.
Exactly. Holding his hate rallies. And here is the thing. I am now, upon reflection, we've had 24 hours to live with the special counsel announcement. I'm actually glad we have a special counsel, because one thing that we all know is there have been no charges for the command structure of the insurrection, right? Donald Trump and Mark Meadows, Rudy Giuliani, Jeffrey Clark, John Eastman, Bannon, and the rest of them. And that was under Merrick Garland's leadership of the investigation. So I am actually pretty pleased that the investigation has been entirely passed off to Jack Smith. He will now oversee both investigations. And both Merrick Garland and Jack Smith have said this will not slow the pace of the investigation, not by 1 minute. I would ask the question, you can't go any slower than zero, because zero is how many ruling class criminals have been held accountable. So this, we're going to look back 6 months from now, a year from now, and we may see this as a turning point, with the turn being toward prosecutions.
So what should we expect to see from here as far as the special counsel probe is concerned? What happens next?
We should expect to hear nothing. The reason I say that is because just yesterday, when I was in federal court in Washington, D.C., we learned that there were 3 special grand juries impaneled on one day. I'm not going to say that's unprecedented, but it may very well be unprecedented. That can't be a coincidence that the same day Merrick Garland announces a special counsel, we have 3 new special grand juries impaneled in D.C. So because grand jury proceedings are secret by law, I don't think we should expect to hear much in the coming weeks, perhaps even the next couple of months. But let's not forget, Jack Smith stepped into an investigation that has been ongoing for a very long time. So it may very well be that the investigative teams are in a position to indict a Jeffrey Clark or a John Eastman. And if the investigation continues apace, that could very well happen in the next week or couple of months. But I will say, Brian, there are lots of really good investigative journalists who have staked out the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. They're watching every entrance and exit, looking to see who comes and who goes. So we may end up learning a little something about who's appearing before these special grand juries.
Now, if the special counsel does choose to indict, what comes next? What happens from there?
So here's how the special counsel regulations are set up. If the special counsel decides to indict, he would make a recommendation to Merrick Garland. And Merrick Garland really only has two decisions. He can accept it. And given that he has decided he will be hands off and has turned the whole thing over to somebody he trusts to do this work and make these recommendations, Jack Smith, I have to believe Merrick Garland would accept a recommendation to indict Donald Trump or Mark Meadows or others. And if Merrick Garland disagrees with it and says, I don't think Donald Trump should be indicted, I think that very unlikely. But then the good thing about a special counsel appointment is there's a daylight provision in the special counsel regulations that says if Merrick Garland declines to do something the special counsel has recommended, he must report that out to Congress. So there's a little bit of daylight in the process that we would not have had if we didn't have the appointment of special counsel. But to directly answer the question, if special counsel says we've got enough evidence to indict Trump, we've got the indictments drafted and prepared, Attorney General Garland, this is our recommendation, I would bet the farm on Merrick Garland approving it. And then we see indictments, we see trials, we see convictions, and we see people being held accountable for what's been done to the United States.
From your lips to God's ears. We'll leave it there. For those of you watching, if you enjoyed this discussion and want to see this become a regular series, there are two ways to let us know. First is to drop a comment in the comment section below and let us know if you'd like to see more. And second, it's by subscribing to both Brian Tyler Cohen and Glenn Kirshner's channels. The links to both of those channels are right here on the screen. So take a quick second and hit subscribe. With that said, I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
Thanks so much for watching.